În cei peste 700 de ani de când castelul Buda păzește capitala Ungariei, istoria și tradiția au primit alături și inovația. Nu degeaba la Budapesta a fost deschisă încă din anul 1896, cea de-a doua linie de metrou din toată lumea, după cea din Londra. Pe malul vestic al Dunării, clădirile de patrimoniu elegante fac loc și construcțiilor industriale din cărămidă, în buna tradiție a brezelelor medievale ale meșteșugarilor și meseriașilor maghiari. Aici l-am găsit pe Ákos Maroi, un antreprenor în serie, așa cum este cunoscut la Budapesta. Ákos se concentrează acum pe cel mai recent startup al său, Aeroglass, care a obținut recent un grant european pentru inovație de 1,1 milioane de euro prin programul Horizon 2020. Aeroglass folosește tehnologia realității augmentate, pe care o regăsim și la jocul fenomen Pokémon Go. Dar pentru o cauză, să spunem, mai serioasă, startup-ul budapestan face ochelari care ușurează munca piloților de avioane și reduc riscul accidentelor.
I'm Ákos Maroi. I'm a what you could call a serial entrepreneur. This is my second startup, and I also have a media art background and an activism background. So I'm very interested in all sorts of things that change society through technology or engagement. And doing startups is one approach to achieve that, and this is what I'm doing right now. Aeroglass helps aircraft pilots to navigate the skies in a safer manner, because what we do is that we draw all the important navigation features in 3D augmented reality all around the pilot, so that it's very natural him to understand where he is at, if he's about to pass through an airspace boundary, or if he's following the air corridor that he's supposed to be in, or his own flight path, or if there is low visibility, we can show him where the terrain is so that he doesn't hit the terrain, or where other aircraft are. Now we are doing this in a totally easy to understand 3D AR manner. So when I'm talking about airspaces, we actually draw a 3D space aware as a 3D body of where it actually is, as opposed to having to cross-reference a 2D chart either on paper or on a 2D display and having to interpret the readings of this instrument. The novelty item comes from the really 3D augmented reality, 3D correct visualization, so that whenever you look around, you actually see what's out there, even though it's technically invisible. All these constructs like airspaces, routes, and things like that, they are human-made constructs which don't have a physically corresponding element to them because they are just thin air. But it's very important that we follow these constraints. Or, for example, when there is low visibility, you don't see the terrain because you're in a cloud, but we can still draw it in through 3D. And the innovative aspect of this is that it's totally easy and natural for us to understand our environment as we look around, as opposed to having to look at a chart or look at various complex instruments and having to interpret them.
Ochelarii Aeroglass sunt în stadiu avansat de producție, dar mai este mult până la ieșirea pe piață. Produsul lui Ákos preia literalmente celebrii Google Glass și dezvoltă noi aplicații pentru noi piețe.
Currently we are in a late prototyping stage. We are doing test runs on the ground, so not in the air but on the ground. For this we're using cars instead of airplanes because it's simply easier. We also have a simulation setup which is just behind me, which we're using for both development and demonstration purposes. And we have yet to finalize the physical aspects of the hardware. So what we're doing is that we're utilizing off-the-shelf equipment as much as we can. For example, we are not building smart glasses ourselves, we are sourcing the smart glasses.
Where?
Currently, we started out with Google Glass, then we switched to Epson Moverio BT200. Currently we're using Osterhout Design Group R7s. We used R6s, now we're using R7s. And then we'll probably take a look at the Moverio BT300 when it comes out in the fall. So basically we are keeping a very open eye on the hardware that's available on the market. Having said that, these glasses are not totally suitable for our purpose as they come out from the factories, so we have to modify them. And for example, these hardware modifications are not finalized yet. So what we still need to do is we need to do a lot of verification both on the ground and in air, and we have to finalize the physical aspects or the hardware aspects, hardware modifications for the product to become available.
Antreprenorul maghiar a venit cu $140.000 de acasă în primul an și jumătate de business. după care a reușit să atragă finanțarea europeană Horizon de 1,1 milioane euro, la care se adaugă investiții de capital de risc, inclusiv susținută prin instrumentul european Jeremy.
I self-funded Aeroglass for 1.5 years for about $140,000. Then we got the EU grant, which is 1.1 million euros in support over a 2-year period. And then we raised $250,000 this spring. The EU Horizon 2020 SME Instrument Phase 2 grant is a 70% support intensity grant, which means that you get the support money, which is non-refundable. It's not a loan. They don't ask for equity. But whatever you spend through this grant, they only cover 70% of the cost. So if you spend 100 euros, you have to come up with the 30 euros yourself, and then they're going to chip in 70 euros. So that's the basic construct of the grant. It's mostly pre-financing, so they are supposed to give you the support money beforehand, before you spend it. But in effect, this is not totally true. So you have to do some part pre-financing as well. So basically, in our case, we have won a grant which is 1.1 million euros in support money, and we have to cough up 460,000 euros over 2 years as the self-financing part. And actually even a bit more, because we have to pre-finance some parts of the project itself because of the timing of how the grant money is actually distributed. So this is how basically it works. It's a lot of support, and it's very welcome. But you have to be aware of these aspects of the self-financing and the cash flow aspects of the grant process.
Încă din primele faze de realizare a Aeroglass, ACO și-a țintit peste ocean, unde se află cea mai relevantă piață aviatică. Esențială este prezența americană a startup-ului unguresc, asigurată de celălalt cofondator. American Jet by Jet, Jeffrey Johnson, asigură un nivel intens de reprezentare în SUA, Aeroglass având deschisă la San Diego o companie.
Aviation is a very US-oriented market, so for us it's very essential to be present in the American market. This is something you can only do if you really appear on the local market as like a domestic player. So you need to establish a legal entity in the US, and you have to be American in every sense of the word. And this is what we have done as well. So when we are having contacts with US clients or US partners, they are having a contact with our US entity, and so for them it really looks like a domestic business affair. This is very important, because otherwise there's no way you can enter the US market. From a physical perspective, we don't actually spend that much time in the US. Having said that, we do have a San Diego-based co-founder who is an American by birth, and he is there and always present. Our partner Jeff is mostly involved in the product development aspects of Aeroglass, and he provides a permanent presence for us. Having said that, at this very moment, because we're still doing the finalizing of the product, his involvement is limited from a time perspective, so it also has other involvements besides Aeroglass.
Nu e ușor pentru un startup din estul Europei să se afirme internațional, dar Aeroglass vede și aici avantaje și le fructifică. În primul rând, forța de muncă entuziastă, pregătită ok și la costuri destul de bune.
It's very exciting to do startups here in East Europe for a number of reasons. One is that there is a thriving tech scene. There's a lot of people who are interested in challenges, and they want to work on interesting projects, which is good. On the other hand, our challenges are more than technological challenges that we need to solve. There is a very big shortage of seed funding in Hungary, so if you can't afford to pre-finance or seed finance your own project, you're going to be in a very difficult position to raise seed financing here. There's a problem with market access. You sort of get access to the European market, but if you really look at it, actually East Europe is not really in a good position. So a lot of Hungarian startups, they relocate either formally or realistically, they relocate to Western Europe, to say Sweden or Germany, so that they have a Swedish or German address which looks better with customers. Similar to in our case when we have established a US entity for us, so that the US customers experience a domestic business partnership when they talk to us. So basically, being in East Europe has kind of drawbacks in terms of global positioning and perception. And we also have some advantages because there is interest here in terms of talent pool, and the costs are lower here. Even though some of the costs are higher, like taxation is really high, the overall costs are actually lower than in Western Europe.
Ungaria are printre cele mai mari taxe din Europa. TVA este 27%, iar pentru a-ți deschide un SRL ai nevoie de capital minim de aproape 10.000 de euro. După o bogată experiență în antreprenoriat, nici Ákos Maroi nu este prea mulțumit de relația dintre omul de afaceri și statul ungar.
So the business environment in Hungary is not really welcoming. The taxes are very high. I think one of the highest in the region, especially human resource related taxes, which of course we are in an HR intensive startup. Most of our costs are HR related. The authorities are not really cooperative or helpful. If you make a mistake, the basic assumption is that you wanted to cheat them. So it's not that they just draw your attention to your mistake, but it starts with a fine or some sort of penalty. So it's not really it's not a welcoming environment. Having said that, there are some government organizations which try to help startups, which is good. For example, we're working with the Hungarian Trading House. They are helping us go abroad and present ourselves here and there.
Concurenții micuțului startup budapestan nu sunt mulți, dar sunt mari. Vorbim despre producători americani și izraelieni de display-uri montate pe casca pilotului, cum ar fi Elbit sau Rockwell Collins. Ei sunt taxați însă pe zona militară, echipând inclusiv piloții de F-35.
In terms of head-worn displays or head-mounted displays for aviation, there is 4 global players, including us. And the other players, they are mostly focused on the upper end of the market. We are first focusing on general aviation pilots. But the pricing is it's really unclear in the market at the moment. Currently there is a standardization process going on in the US, which was initiated by the Federal Aviation Administration there, and we are taking part in this process as well. So we are kind of part of the standardization group, and we are in that way following very closely what the standard is going to be for the commercial aviation sector. The standard is looking at the commercial aviation sector.
În schimb, Aeroglass țintește clienții mici, din aviația generală, în primul rând piloți independenți. Ulterior, Ákos vrea să își extindă radarul către aviația comercială de nivel mare, iar apoi către industrie, minerii, construcții și, în final, automobile.
Our initial target market is private pilots, because we believe that that's a very experimental group and they are very brave, and a lot of pilots, they really want to try out new things and they have the freedom to do so. There's a lot of experimental piloting and experimental aircraft work going out in the field. And then later on we want to also focus on bigger aircraft, commercial aviation as high as passenger aircraft. Of course, there we'll have to collaborate with established avionics manufacturers or aircraft manufacturers, and we are in talks with a few of them. Even the usual suspects like Airbus. In the industry we are in discussion with collaboration in that regard. Having said that, aviation is our initial focus, so we want to go into other sectors later on, like industry, construction, mining, various industrial sectors. And after that, we believe that this technology will be useful for general automotive as well, which is going to be very exciting later on.